Hi everybody!
On June 3rd, 2025, rumors started blazing that everyone's favorite purple dragon might be making an appearance during the Xbox showcase on June 8th. At the time of recording, we're still a couple of days away from it, but I figured it was prudent to at least give my thoughts on the matter. Usually we'd start with why this isn't likely to happen, because I'm Mr. Negative with how cynical I am. However, I think we might actually see it. I covered in the past how a Spyro game might get announced last year. That turned out to be wrong, mostly because Toys for Bob got closed thanks to their overlords at Activision, then reopened as an independent studio not long after the fact. So if they had been working on a Spyro game, it definitely would have gotten delayed, so it makes sense why it wasn't revealed last year. The game just wasn't ready. Also, we know Toys for Bob had a ton of issues developing 2023's Crash Team Rumble. You can see why the Easter eggs they were dropping for Spyro came to naught. However, those Easter eggs are the very reason I think we're going to get this, since they were dropping hints as far back as the Reignited trilogy, which they worked on. For those not in the know, the collection of the first 3 Spyro games came out in 2018 and was super well regarded. It also supposedly moved 10 million copies worldwide, which, in the gaming world, is a metric fuckton. Couple this with 3D platformers now seeing a small resurgence in recent years, and it just makes too much sense. Look no further than last year's Astrobot for the PlayStation 5. As of late March of this year, Astro has managed to move 2.3 million copies, which is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you consider its budget was actually rather reasonable, unlike Concord, which lost so much money, most companies would have been 6 feet under. Now before someone comes at me in the comments saying Spyro is dead, first of all, pound sand. Second of all, I'm using a little thing called logic, something you pudding brains need to learn to use. Also, I've heard a Spyro game is in the works from sources I trust, so I believe it's a matter of when, not if. Also, if you doubt me, look at how good my track record is with Falcom-related games. Now that I'm on a negative tangent, let's get into why I think it might not happen. While I do think it's probable we'll see Spyro announced at this showcase, we also have to look at why this might not be the case. It's due diligence after all. The initial information comes via a leaker who seems to have a good track record. But at the time of recording, it's mostly from websites that, while they have the fingers on the pulse of multiple genres of games, are also relatively small compared to some of the larger gaming outlets. I'm in no way saying they're participating in yellow journalism. Merely, it's better to err on the side of caution here and consider the fact they know Spyro will generate a lot of clicks for them, which makes sense when you consider Spyro is one of the most important legacy IPs in gaming history. Were it not for the original 3 Insomniac games, PlayStation would be a very different platform. Sure, it'd still have had the work of Naughty Dog, but would it have embraced Insomniac games in the same way? Keep in mind, Insomniac has created some of the most enduring IPs for the PlayStation family of consoles, with things like Ratchet & Clank, Resistance, and now their take on Spider-Man. They really are one of the crown jewels for PlayStation. Their impact with Spyro was also felt well after Universal decided to not renew their contract with Insomniac and take the Spyro games third party. Look no further than Enter the Dragonfly. That game, while it's objectively bad, was one of the biggest warning signs to not trust game publishers. Just because it's from a series you love doesn't mean it'll actually be good. Enter the Dragonfly managed to sell decently, albeit that was solely off-brand recognition. Subsequent Spyro games failed to move the needle, and it eventually gave us the first reboot, which featured some big-name actors as the characters. However, that too failed to reach expectations, and was cancelled after a handful of games. This led Spyro to go dormant for a long time, until 2018 that is. While we haven't had a wait like we did between 2009 to 2018, we've still had a long wait. On average, games take 3 to 5 years to develop, so the absolute earliest we should have seen the next game was 2021. But, like I mentioned earlier, Toys for Bob had issues while developing the last Crash game. So couple that with a leaker, who I'm not too certain of, and I think we might be waiting a bit longer. But let's get to how I ultimately feel on the matter. So where do I actually stand on this matter? I'll admit, I am skeptical we'll see it here, though I also wouldn't be entirely surprised if it did end up getting announced. since the leaker did also mention Double Fine in their post and video regarding the topic. When I did some digging online, there's been rumblings from far more credible sources the last couple of days regarding that development team, who are also part of the Xbox umbrella. So using my gut feeling, that tells me there's probably not just smoke, but some fire here, which, if true, would get me reacting like Maximilian Dude when the Marvel Collection was announced. Which is saying something, as most people seem to view me as an emotionless robot. But both logic and my gut are saying we're going to get something here. Though it also wouldn't surprise me if a future Spyro project ended up getting announced during a later Xbox showcase, just to give the game more time to cook, and to not overstuff a potential showcase either. No length has been given for the Xbox showcase, but I imagine it'll be at most 45 minutes. So, unless Spyro is releasing later this year, I imagine it has a much smaller chance of being shown off, though I could of course be wrong. What do you think though? Will we see Spyro, or is it nothing more than a fool's hope? Now check out my Summer Game Fest prediction video, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.